I thought I knew pain, until I saw her with him. The woman I loved, the life I built shattered in a single moment. I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased. My world twisted into something unrecognizable, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The laughter that once filled our home now haunts me, echoing in the empty spaces where love used to live. Every touch, every kiss was a lie, and now all that's left is rage. I will never be the same, and neither will she. As I dropped the birthday card in the mailbox, I briefly thought about how it had been a whole year. That realization, more than the chilly September air, sent a shiver down my back. Well, life goes on, I murmured to myself as I began my usual half-mile walk to work. When I searched for my new condo, I made sure it was close enough to walk to my office. This way, I could sell my car, save on insurance, and if I ever needed to get somewhere, I still had my motorcycle. There were shops, restaurants, and everything else I could need within a mile of my new home. At 6 a.m., it was still dark outside. I didn't mind because there was little traffic. I usually reached my office in less than 15 minutes. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, poured myself a cup, and headed to my office. How do I already have 18 emails this morning? I wondered as I looked through them. Most were unimportant and just jokes, but 2 contained information I had been waiting for. I printed those out and replied to the rest, which took until about 7:10. After that, I examined the sales from yesterday, checking what was produced on the later shifts and any issues that might have come up overnight. It was just after 8 o'clock, and the other employees were beginning to arrive. I was the purchasing manager for a manufacturing company based in Minneapolis. I also managed the office and supervised about a third of the 175 workers. I had been in this job for 6 years, and after the last 8 months, I was becoming well known for my hard work. If you put in the hours I did, you would do well too, unless you really didn't try. I was definitely doing my best. I usually arrived between 6 o'clock and 6:15 in the morning and didn't leave until at least 7:30 at night. Weekends varied, but I generally put in at least another 8 hours. I'd become very dedicated to my job, but it was all I had now. Today was the end of the month, and I wanted to ensure everything went smoothly. I checked my inventory numbers, postponed 2 truckloads of materials until Monday, and reminded everyone to finish their shop orders by the end of the day. I was doing a final check of my inventory when my boss, Ken, passed by my office on his way out. "What are you still doing here? I'm the only one you need to impress, and I'm leaving," he said. "Ken, I'm just reviewing my inventory and production numbers before corporate closes the books tomorrow morning," I answered. "Steve, your numbers are great, and your month-end results are always strong. Just turn off your computer and go home," Ken encouraged me. "I will. I just have one more thing to finish, and then I'll leave." "Good, and I really don't want to see you here tomorrow." The pest control staff is coming to treat the office Saturday morning, so no one can be in here for a day afterward. "Go home, relax, and enjoy your weekend," Ken told me as he left. I did leave, but it was well after 8 o'clock before I finally walked out. On my way home, I saw people out enjoying themselves in the pubs, dining in restaurants, and strolling through the lively streets. I just shook my head and headed back to my apartment, alone as usual. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom place on the 2nd floor that I had completely fixed up before moving in. I had cozy heating and a large balcony at the back that looked out over a park with a lake. There was a path for walking and biking around the lake, which was about 3 miles long. I loved to get up early on Sunday mornings and do a few laps before breakfast. When I opened my door and tossed my keys on the counter, I noticed my answering machine flashing. Without checking how many messages I had, I hit the delete button. I walked over to the fridge, took out an open bottle of my favorite wine, pulled out the cork, and grabbed a nice wine glass from the cabinet. I had started using them a couple of months earlier after asking myself one night, "What am I saving these for?" They were beautiful, and they shouldn't just sit and collect dust. With a glass of wine in hand, I turned on the TV and opened my laptop. I saw I had 6 new emails. 2 were from eBay about items I was bidding on, 1 was from my parents, 2 were from my only friend, Nick, and 1 was offering a job working from home. "I'll check them tomorrow," I thought as I moved to the kitchen. I had remodeled the kitchen shortly after moving in. It looked like something from a magazine with a big gas stove, a double oven, a large stainless steel fridge, 2 sinks, and beautiful countertops. It all looked out over the dining room and balcony. Not long ago, I had trouble sleeping. My mind wouldn't quiet down no matter how long I lay in bed. I found that the only way to sleep well was to be really tired. So, I had turned the second bedroom into a home gym. Every night between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, I pushed myself hard. After that, I would take a quick cold shower, have one last glass of wine, and then go to bed. That was my routine day after day. I had lost weight over the past year and was now fit at 175 pounds, down from a softer 195. I wasn't very big, but I was strong. Dinner was the same as it had been all week. I didn't feel like cooking when I got home at 8 o'clock every night, so I found a local restaurant that would prepare and freeze 5 meals for me each week. Tonight it was steak with peppers and rice. Just a few minutes in the microwave and it was ready to eat. I poured myself another glass of wine, went to the living room, and turned on the news. There never seemed to be any good stories anymore. The news always showed troubling events, disasters, and scandals involving famous people. It was always the same. The local news wasn't much better. Reality shows seemed to take over. Many of these shows didn't seem smart, and the few that were interesting dragged on for weeks. Reality. They don't know what reality really is, I said to myself as I finally turned it off and headed to my workout room. I spent 20 minutes on the treadmill, which got my heart racing and warmed up my legs. After that, I did 15 minutes of stretching before starting my main workout. 30 to 45 minutes of training with the heavy bag was more than most people could do. I focused on every move, putting all my energy into each strike. As a kid, I practiced a Chinese martial art in a small school just a few blocks from my home. Growing up, I watched many action movies and thought it would be amazing to do what I saw. After months of asking, I promised my dad I would stick with it, so I became a student at a local dojo. But it was nothing like the movies. The instructor ran our school with strict rules. You never questioned his commands unless you wanted to feel his disappointment. He really pushed us until we could barely move. After about 2 months, I wanted to quit. I paid for a year, and you're going to finish, my dad told me firmly. Are you a quitter? He asked. It's tough. Deal with it. Complete the year, and if you want to stop after that, fine. But I want you to give it everything you have. I don't want to see you not trying. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I replied. After that, I gave it my all. That's when I met Nick. He was a year older and went to the same school. Even back then, he was larger than me by about 40 pounds, but he didn't share the same motivation. My dad put me in this class to help me build confidence and character, Nick told me one day. I don't really want to be here, but I have to. We became best friends. We spent time together and played, but most importantly, we trained together. We would help each other with our training, and Nick often said I kicked too hard. Can you ease up a bit? You don't need to kick so hard all the time, Nick said, sounding a bit worried. But I was focused. In just 2 months, we would be allowed to spar in class, and that's what I was really looking forward to. My first sparring session was a total mess. I lost to at least 3 other students, which was a big surprise for me. It took me 3 more months of training before I finally won my first match. After that, I kept improving. I trained for 4 more years before I decided to stop. Nick trained for 2 years before he chose to leave. I earned my second-degree black belt, but then I found new interests. My sensei wanted me to stay, but I had already made my decision. He told me I could always come back, and we ended things on a good note. For a while, I dropped by to visit, but after a year, I stopped. That was until a few months ago. Looking at my watch, I saw it was almost 11 o'clock. I was covered in sweat and slowly walked to the bathroom. After I changed out of my workout clothes, I tossed them in the hamper and stepped into the shower. I let the cold water refresh me for a few minutes. As I washed my hands and cleaned off the sweat, I noticed my hair was cut short and I had a 10-day-old beard. I used shampoo, conditioner, and brushed my teeth to finish my shower. After I dried off with a warm towel and wiped the mirror, I looked at my reflection. I could see I was still here, but I wondered if I was really enjoying life. On Saturday morning, I sent a quick email to Nick. Unless Lisa has talked you into selling your bike, please join me for breakfast on Sunday at 8 o'clock, if you can still wake up that early. The Mom and Pops on 321. You know the place. I loved my bike. Over the past 5 years, I had owned and driven many affordable sports cars, but nothing felt as good as riding my Harley. The sound of the engine, the wind on my face, and the freedom of being on the road alone with my bike were things I really needed right now. I had stopped wearing my helmet a couple of months ago, usually just opting for sunglasses and sometimes a cap. It was still a bit chilly when I left around 9:30 on Saturday. I saw only one other biker who greeted me with a nod. At this time of year, most weekend riders had already stored their bikes away, but dedicated enthusiasts like me kept going until the first snowfall. I needed an oil change, so I went to the dealership, knowing it wouldn't be busy on a chilly Saturday morning. "Just an oil change," I told the service technician. "Are you going to wait?" he asked. "Well, unless you want to give me a ride home, I'll wait. How long will it take?" "Give me an hour and I'll have you back on the road," he replied. Since I had some time to kill, I browsed the new and used bikes on the showroom floor. "Looking for a bike?" a salesman asked as he approached me with a friendly smile. "Nope, just getting my Ultra serviced. If you have any questions, just let me know," he said, returning to his colleagues near the offices. After a few moments, one bike caught my eye. I climbed on and adjusted it upright. This is quite the ride, I thought to myself as I admired the bright green custom chopper. I had once thought about getting a chopper, but I had traded my Road King for the Ultra because of some past issues. "A beauty, isn't it?" the salesman said, coming up behind me. "It has a 2008 engine with only 2,200 miles on it. Most parts are custom and the frame was handmade. Would you be interested in taking it for a spin?" he asked. "I don't think I can afford something like this," I replied. "Well, the owner is looking for a cash sale or would consider a trade with cash." "What are you riding now?" "A black 08 Ultra," I said. "Owe anything on it?" "Nope, it's mine outright," I answered, my interest in the green chopper growing. Suddenly, I was riding down the road on the green bike. It felt smooth and easy to handle. After about 20 minutes, I returned to the dealership. "What do you think?" the salesman asked. "A little more shake in the seat than I'd prefer, but it rides well," I said. "Interested in talking to the owner?" he offered. After another look, I replied, "Yes, let's get him on the phone." "Why are you selling it?" my first question was. "My partner isn't comfortable on the back seat, and I want to keep things easy between us," he explained. "I understand," I said. "Got any saddlebags for it?" "I have leather bags and a small windshield if you need those," he replied. 30 minutes later, the owner and his partner arrived at the dealership with the accessories, and we stepped outside to chat. After discussing things for about 45 minutes and completing the purchase, I rode off on his bike while he and his partner took mine. As they say, it's a win-win for both of us. I made an appointment with the dealer for next week to replace the seat and add a new shock to lessen the bumps on my ride. Call me delicate, but after about 100 miles, my back was really feeling it. When I arrived, I saw Nick sitting by the window, sipping his coffee. I had barely turned off the engine before he was by my side. "When did you get this beauty?" he asked. "Just yesterday. I traded my Ultra and a little cash for it. What do you think?" "Wow, what's not to like?" he replied, giving it a thorough look. He spent the next 20 minutes admiring it, asking questions and expressing his interest in something similar. "Lisa would be so mad if I showed up at home with this," Nick said, still checking it out. "Even though she hardly rides with me anymore, she wouldn't agree to it. Before you leave, though, you have to let me take it for a spin. You owe me that much," he said as we went inside. After we ordered breakfast, I shared the whole story of how I traded my Ultra for this new bike. We settled in to catch up on each other's lives. I told Nick that even though business was down about 15% because of the economy, things were still going well for me. Last month, we managed to attract 2 distributors from one of our competitors, which should help us have a strong finish this year. Nick mentioned that his company had let go of almost 10% of the staff and that everyone was working hard to keep the business afloat this year. I never thought I'd feel lucky just to have a job, any job, but that's how it is now. I tell the guys on the floor to focus on their work and appreciate having a job because there aren't many out there," Nick shared. I asked how Lisa was doing at the hospital and if her job felt stable. "People will always need care, and hospitals need good nurses. The only problem is that sometimes she has to cover for others when they don't show up. I've had to pick her up early in the morning because she was too tired to drive home. We just have to do what we can to make ends meet. You know Lisa and Carol are still friends, and we see her every now and then, Nick said carefully. I raised my hand and said, let's not talk about that. Just thought you'd want to know. She still asks about you, he replied. If it were anyone else, I'd be out of here already, I said quickly. Just thought you should know. I heard you had a little incident at the dojo a couple of weeks ago, Nick laughed. I heard the instructor told you to take a break until you could manage your focus better. It wasn't a big deal. I was sparring with the kids when his new fighter made some comments. I just wanted to let you know he was feeling a bit too sure of himself after his win, I said to him. Well, I heard he called you weak, saying you're only good enough to practice with the younger kids, Nick chuckled. Kenny mentioned you got in the ring and handled him in less than 5 minutes, and the sensei had to step in. You know how stories can get mixed up, I replied. I did a quick move and then a follow-up. I guess that made him a bit frustrated because he got too aggressive. He left himself open, so I had to remind him to protect himself. I might have been a little too firm, though. I heard I might have caused him some discomfort. Hopefully next time he'll be more cautious, I said with a light smile. Well, if you want to practice with anyone else, don't count me in. I'm done with that, Nick responded. You never do anything halfway, do you? He added, already knowing my answer. We talked for another hour until Nick said he had to go. I'm heading to Lisa's parents for dinner tonight. Want to come? It's no trouble, and Lisa would love to see you. It's been almost 6 months since we all got together. Not today, I replied. I need to finish some work before Monday morning, but thanks for the invite. Maybe next time, I answered. Buddy, you can't avoid everyone forever, Nick said with a friendly push before taking my new bike out for a ride. After about 10 minutes, an excited Nick returned to the parking lot. I have to get one of these, he said after getting off my bike. The only thing is, it's much faster than mine. I wouldn't want to take a sharp turn at full speed on it, he said, taking off his helmet. I reminded Nick to be careful and not to take any chances. He headed home, and I set off on my green bike for a long ride. Around 6:30, I stopped at a small diner on my way back into town. I wasn't very hungry, but wanted a little snack until breakfast. I ordered a burger, some onion rings, and a soda while keeping an eye on my bike from the window. Everyone who walked by took at least a second look. Then 3 girls parked beside my bike and examined it for about 5 minutes before one of them decided to sit on it. That wasn't okay with me. What if I opened your car and sat inside? I asked as I walked over to them. Startled, 2 of them jumped back, nearly running into me while the one on the bike asked if it was mine. Yes, it's my bike. Didn't anyone teach you to respect other people's things? I asked. I never knew my mom, and my dad would have already tried to take it, she replied without skipping a beat. How does it ride, and how is anyone supposed to sit in that small back seat? She asked. It rides fine, and I honestly don't care about the back seat because there's no one to sit there anyway, I replied, feeling a bit irritated. So if you don't mind, please get off my bike. Really? Do you think my weight will hurt your nice bike? She shot back. I wouldn't go for a ride now, even if you asked nicely, she said, walking into the diner. People are all different, I muttered to myself as I went back to my table. The 3 girls at the counter kept looking my way every so often. I guess I'm the topic of their talk, I thought as I finished my meal. I had already put on my jacket and was paying when the slim brunette came up to me. I've decided to give you another chance, she said. I usually don't do this, but you seem like you could use a friend. Since you live here, would you mind giving me a ride home as a way to make up for earlier? Let me just grab my jacket from the car and we can go, she told me as she walked outside. If I wasn't so surprised, I might have said no, but 5 minutes later we were on my bike, heading into town. The faster I went, the more she held on. When we got into town, she gave me directions to her place. That was fun. But you might want to do something about that seat if you want me to ride with you again, she said. It's a bit too small and uncomfortable. Here's my number, she said, handing me a piece of paper. Call me if you want to do this again, but remember to fix that seat, she said, walking up the stairs without glancing back. Just before she went inside, she turned around. By the way, I'm Pam, if you want to know, she said as she disappeared through the door. Interesting, but quite direct, I thought as I tucked her number inside my shirt pocket. The end of the month went better than I expected, and when I got 2 vendors to lower their prices by 5%, the company was very pleased. "Keep it up, and we might still get a bonus this year," Ken told me. "Also, with Bill leaving, I put your name in for his company car. You can leave it in the garage, but if you need it, it's yours." I thanked Ken and mentioned it would be useful on the weekends when the snow began to fall. For now, I enjoyed my morning walks to work. The dealer switched the seat on my new bike for a more comfortable one, and with a new rear shock, the bike was almost as good as my Road King had been. "Do you have any extra seats for my bike?" I asked. "What are you looking for?" he replied. "Something more comfortable than the one I have," I told him. "I have a good seat with quick release bolts. You can keep it in your bag and put it on when you need it," he said. It cost a lot, but everything with the Harley-Davidson name is pricey. I held on to that piece of paper Pam gave me for about a week, unsure if I should call. I had only been on 3 dates in the last year. One was a work dinner with a female client. Marketing usually took care of that, but I couldn't avoid this one. The other 2 dates were nice, but we didn't share much in common. Blind dates were not my favorite. "Hello, Pam," I started. "This is Steve," hoping she would remember me. "Steve? Steve who?" she asked. "Let me give you a hint. Green Chopper," I told her. "I thought you forgot about me. What took you so long to call?" she replied. "Work has been busy and I needed to fix a few things on my bike," I said. "There's a ride this Saturday. Would you like to join me?" "Did you change that seat yet?" Pam asked. "Well, let's just say the new seat should be nicer," I replied. "In that case, yes. What time will you pick me up?" she asked. "About 9:30. Make sure to dress warmly. The forecast says it could be in the low 50s. Do you have a leather jacket and boots?" I asked. "Don't worry about me, just don't be late." "Do you remember where I live?" she said. "I know the address, but what's your apartment number?" I asked. "Not so fast. I'll just meet you out front at 9:30 and we can go from there," she said firmly. After that, I struggled with small talk and wasn't doing well. Thankfully, she ended the conversation by saying she'd see me on Saturday. I felt like a teenager asking someone out for the first time. I was embarrassed by how nervous I felt. When Saturday came, I put on my warm leather jacket, mid-calf boots, and grabbed a pair of gloves. After riding about 1.5 miles, I stopped to put on my hat. It was chilly. After about 10 minutes, the heat from the engine finally started to warm me up. Thank goodness for the windshield, I thought, stopping at a light. It blocked just enough wind to keep me comfortable. "You're late," was the first thing Pam said to me. "It's only 9:35, I replied, glancing at my watch. "Late is late. Now let's see what kind of seat you have for me," she said, approaching my bike. I attached the new seat, started the engine, and told her to hop on. The dealership was 20 minutes away, and I could feel Pam holding on to me, resting gently behind. "Wow, that's chilly," Pam said as she got off the bike. "My cheeks are frozen," she added, rubbing her face. We went inside to warm up and grab a cup of coffee as the rest of the group began to arrive. "Here," I said, tossing her a face mask. "This will protect your face from the wind and keep you warmer," I explained. "It has a skull on it," she said with a frown. "It's for warmth, not looks," I replied, a little annoyed. "Thank you," she finally said. "I really appreciate it." The ride started around 10 o'clock and lasted for about 2 hours. There were about 30 bikes, mostly single riders. Not many people wanted to ride in this cold. We returned to the dealership just before noon. They offered some cold snacks, but I wasn't interested. "Want to go out for lunch?" I asked. "Yes, but somewhere I can find something hot," Pam replied. We stopped at Denny's, found a booth in the back, and the waitress brought us a pot of hot coffee. Pam warmed her hands with the cup while looking at the menu. "Feeling warmer?" I asked. "I am now," she said, taking small sips. "That was fun. Cold, but enjoyable," she told me. "Do you do this often?" "Not as much as I used to," I answered. "I used to ride to Sturgis every year for the rally, but I haven't been back in almost 3 years. Maybe this summer." "I've seen pictures. Are there really that many bikes?" she asked. "They're everywhere. It's a big event that lasts almost 2 weeks. My friend Nick and I used to ride there straight through and camp for 3 days. I'm used to more comfort now, though. Sleeping on the ground and eating cold food isn't for me anymore," I said. "But I do like to go on long rides once in a while. It clears my mind and I feel free." "What do you do for work when you're not riding?" she asked. "I'm a purchasing manager for a manufacturing company in town," I said. "And you?" I asked back. "I teach art and do some freelance work," Pam replied. "There's not a lot of money in it, but at least I enjoy what I do, not like most people I know." "Are you seeing anyone right now?" I asked. "Why, are you interested?" she joked, laughing at my reaction. "I had someone before, but it didn't last. A few dates here and there since then, but nothing serious." "How about you?" she asked. "About the same. I had someone special, but it didn't work out either. I haven't dated much in the last year, if that's what you're asking." "So you're kind of starting fresh. That's good. I like that," she said with a smile. "That way I won't have to worry about you just going through the motions," she added. "What makes you think I want anything more than lunch?" I replied. "With a ride like that, I think you're open to new experiences," she laughed. "Now that we've talked about the basics, let's see what else we have in common." Over the next few weekends, I got to know Pam quite well. We both enjoyed the same kinds of food. While I ran, she rollerbladed. She thought my workout room was a bit much, and I told her favorite band wasn't really my style. We decided it was okay to have different tastes. "Do you want to go to a club Saturday night?" she asked on Thursday. "A few friends of mine are going, and I want them to meet you." "I'm not much of a dancer," I admitted, feeling shy. "No worries. Just enjoy yourself," she said with a smile. "Well, I warned you," I replied. When Saturday came, Pam drove because, as she said, "I want to be comfortable, so we're taking my car." The club was packed, but we found a nice table near the dance floor. I had visited this place once before, and it hadn't been a good experience. Pam's friends were welcoming, and we were having a good time when someone showed up that I hoped to avoid. "Hi there," he said with a smirk. "Remember me? I see you've made a new friend. Did the other one leave you?" "Maybe this one needs more than just a nice guy," he added, moving closer. "Pam, this is Dan," I said, trying to keep my cool. "He's been nothing but trouble." His friends tried to pull him away, but as he turned to leave, I couldn't help but comment. "I heard you and your friends like to act tough." Dan turned and came at me, knocking over our table and the drinks around it. The bouncers quickly showed up and escorted Dan, his friends, and me out of the club. "Pam, stay inside," I told her. "You don't want to be part of this. I'll call you later," I said as they led me away. Outside, the three of them started pushing me as we moved around to the side of the building. "Are you scared of me?" I teased Dan. "Need your friends to back you up?" Dan swung at me, but I easily avoided his punches, making a light jab in return. He charged at me, which turned out to be a bad idea. I sidestepped him and quickly took him down, leaving him momentarily out of breath. His friends attempted to step in, but I defended myself, ensuring they couldn't reach me. One of them grabbed me from behind, but I managed to break free and take him down as well. The third person had already run away. I walked over to Dan, who was on the ground, and said, "Don't bother me again." As I turned to leave, I saw Pam looking shocked. "I told you to stay there," I said, gently taking her arm and leading her back to the front of the club. "We should go before the authorities arrive," I added, while guiding her along the sidewalk. "Come on, Pam, we have to leave." We hurried to the parking garage and found her car. I opened the door for her and helped her into the passenger seat. I got in and drove out onto the street, heading to my condo. The ride was quiet. Pam just stared at me. "Steve, what was that all about?" she began to ask, but I interrupted her as I parked in front of my building. "Not tonight. We can talk later, but not now," I said, raising my hand to pause the conversation. "Are you okay to drive?" "I'm okay, it's just that, please, just not tonight," I said, trying to keep calm. "I'll call you," I added as I got out of the car and walked into my building. I glanced back to make sure she was all right before entering. I closed the door, locked it, and tossed my keys onto the counter. I felt frustrated and overwhelmed, but I knew I had to calm down. I woke up the next morning around 6 a.m. I was sitting on the floor in my workout room, leaning against the wall near my treadmill. I was still dressed from the night before, my clothes damp from exertion. My mind was fuzzy from the past day, but I noticed my hands. They were red and swollen, needing care. I didn't remember much from the last hours, only that my thoughts had become darker than usual. The cold ice water on my hands shocked me back to reality. For the next few hours, I switched between warm and cold every 20 minutes to reduce the swelling and get the blood flowing again. As I opened and closed my hands a few times, I was relieved nothing was broken, just a bit hurt. However, I knew I wouldn't be doing anything too active for a while. "I know there's some ointment left that I used before," I said while searching through the bathroom drawers and cabinet, finally finding an old tube. "Not much left. Maybe I should buy some more," I thought, looking at my hands. "Thank goodness it's Sunday. I can take it easy all day if no one visits." It surprised me that it took almost 2 weeks for them to find me. I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't looking for them either. "Steve Moore?" the officer asked when I opened the door. "Yes, I'm Steve Moore," I replied. "We need you to come to the station and give a statement," the second officer said. What could I possibly say? No? "Give me a minute to grab my jacket and I'll be right out," I said, stepping back inside. At the station, we talked back and forth for nearly 2 hours. I explained that once we were outside the club, there was a misunderstanding and I was only trying to protect myself. I told them that if they wanted to hear from witnesses, they should check with the people at our table and the staff at the club. Finally, they told me that everyone there supported my story. "So what's the problem?" I asked. "The problem?" the officer said, sounding frustrated. "You were part of something that could have been avoided." Look, I felt scared for my safety. How was I to know they didn't have anything harmful? I just wanted to resolve the situation quickly and leave, I explained. "Steve, don't make excuses. What made it escalate?" he pressed. "That's something you wouldn't understand unless you were there. Now, unless you're going to charge me, I need to get home. It's late, and I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Thanks for coming to get me, Nick," I said as we left the police station. "No problem, Steve. I heard you were involved in something a couple of weeks back," he said, stopping to look at me. "I don't want to discuss it right now, okay? Steve, I just think with everything that's happened, maybe you should talk to someone? I don't have any issues, so can we just move on?" I raised my voice a little. Okay, I'm just worried about you," Nick said, sounding concerned. "I know, but let's just leave it. It's been a long night." "All right, but just don't disappear on me again," Nick said as he dropped me off at my condo. There were 3 more messages from Pam on my machine, just like all the others, and I deleted them. But she never seemed to give up. For the first 3 weeks, she called about 5 times a week. Then it dropped to 3, then 2, and finally to 1 each week. She always called on Fridays. "It's me, Pam, again," was how each message started. "It's the weekend, and I want to know if you can have dinner or just talk tomorrow. Call me. Oh, and starting next month, I won't be calling you on Fridays anymore. I'll be at your door. Just wanted to give you a heads up. That's it. Good night." "This person is really determined," I said, deleting her message. Could she really be serious? I went back to my usual routine. Work, home, eat, and exercise. That was all my life was again. Nick called a few times, inviting me for dinner or to watch a game, but I usually said no. I spent Thanksgiving with Nick and Lisa. I emailed them a list of topics we wouldn't discuss. They knew it well, but I wanted to be sure. As usual, dinner felt tense with that unspoken issue hanging in the air that no one wanted to mention. I thanked them, and even though they offered, I took a taxi home that night. The next day, Pam sent me a brief message. "Since I haven't heard from you, I guess I'll be waiting at your door next week. Don't worry, I'll bring a pillow to sit on. See you Friday." She wouldn't. No one is that determined, I told myself. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I would enjoy seeing her again. We got along well, and she was a great person. I just didn't want to discuss my past, and I knew Pam was not going to give up easily. The week went slowly, and by Thursday, I was losing my patience. On Friday, I was completely distracted. I sat at my desk and watched the clock. "Big plans tonight?" Ken asked as he passed by my office around 4 o'clock. "She must be someone special to throw you off like this," he joked. "Get out of here. You're not getting anything done. Have a nice night, and I'll see you Monday morning," he added while moving on. At 4:30, I decided to call it a day. I waved to Ken on my way out and headed to the garage for my company car. I usually took it on weekends when I thought the weather might be bad. As I drove home, I realized I was going a little too fast. "Calm down. She might not even show up tonight," I told myself, feeling my heart race. I slowed down and drove carefully. Thankfully, I found a parking spot near my building. She wasn't there yet. For the next hour and a half, I sat in the car, watched the entrance, reviewed some papers I had brought along, made a few calls on my phone, and generally felt chilly. But she never arrived. "Forget it," I said quietly as I put my paperwork away and got out of the car. "She's just playing with me," I thought as I crossed the street, being careful of traffic. I checked my mailbox and walked up the stairs to my condo. There she was, Pam, sitting on a pillow by my door. "Are you always this late? No wonder you don't have any plans," she said, standing up. "If it wasn't for a friendly neighbor, I'd still be waiting outside. Aren't you going to let me in?" she asked, holding what looked like a soft pillow. I couldn't help but smile as I opened the door and we stepped inside. "Do you have any coffee? I've been waiting out there for a while," she said, placing her jacket and pillow on a chair as she walked toward my kitchen. "Give me a minute," I said as I hung up my coat and loosened my tie. "Regular or decaf?" I asked. "I don't mind as long as it's hot," she replied, rubbing her arms. "Well, I'm waiting," Pam said, hands on her hips. "Waiting for what?" I asked as I started the coffee. "An apology for not returning my calls and for leaving me with a lot of unanswered questions," she said, her voice rising a little. "My friends were really interested in the guy I was seeing. He could be funny one moment, but then turn around and cause trouble that landed 2 guys in the hospital." "It didn't go down exactly like that," I explained to her. "They got out of it easier than they could have." "Easier? They went to the hospital on stretchers," Pam said. "It could have been a lot worse," I replied calmly. "You really seem to have some things to work through," Pam remarked, looking at me seriously. "We can talk about that over dinner. What do you have that's good?" she asked. "You were going to feed me, right?" Okay, you got me. What are you in the mood for?" I asked. "Anything but chicken. I watched a documentary about the poultry industry, and I can't eat it since then." "How about some beef stir-fry, seafood Alfredo, or steak with peppers?" I suggested, looking at the meals stored in my freezer. "You made all these yourself?" she asked. "I wish. I buy them frozen from Tony's down the street. I get 6 meals every Monday night, and when I come home late from work, I just heat one up in the microwave." "But you have such a lovely kitchen. You don't cook at all?" she questioned. "Sometimes, especially on weekends if I have the time and if I'm not alone," I said. "Well, let's start with the frozen meals tonight and we can talk about breakfast later," she suggested, finishing her coffee and going to refill her cup. I picked the Alfredo and Pam chose the stir-fry. She liked my choice of wine, even though it wasn't much. "Look, I buy what I enjoy drinking. If I try something new and like it, I buy a few bottles to save for later," I explained. Most of our dinner was light-hearted, avoiding serious topics. Finally, Pam asked, "When are you going to share your story with me so I can understand you better?" "It's quite simple. I met Carol at the University of Minnesota. I was studying business and she was in hospital management. My friend's wife, Lisa, introduced us at a party, and 2 years later we got married. We had 4.5 wonderful years together, and then it ended. That's all there is to it," I told her. "I got more details from a flyer," she said, putting her fork down. "Here's my story. My mom left when I was only a baby. I grew up with my grandparents until they passed. Then at 13, I went back to live with my dad and his girlfriend until I turned 18. I got a full scholarship to the Minneapolis School of Art. In my second year, my dad got into trouble with the law. Now, he's in prison. I rented a room and spent the next 2.5 years trying hard to support myself. I waited tables, drew portraits, and even posed for art classes sometimes. It was hard, but I got through it," she said. "My first real job was teaching art at a Catholic high school where I met Rob. It was a quick engagement because I thought I had found my true love and didn't want to lose him. I believed he was the kindest man ever. He took me everywhere and was always there for me, but I learned too late that he could be very controlling." "I hope I'm not putting you to sleep?" Pam asked as she looked for dessert. "I'm not really into sweets, but I have a few brownies that Tony gave me with last week's meals," I said, heading back to the freezer to grab a small package. "Do you have any ice cream?" "Sorry, I don't," I told her. "Next time, remind me to go shopping with you. You don't seem to know what people like to eat," she said, putting the brownies in the microwave. We settled into the living room with me on the chair and Pam on the couch. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, Rob. After a while, he started telling me who I could be friends with. He didn't like most of my friends, and I didn't like his either. Then I found out I was pregnant, which surprised both of us. By then, we were arguing almost every night, and one of us was always sleeping in the other room. I thought the baby would bring us closer, but it only made things more complicated. One night, when I came home later than usual, Rob was upset. He accused me of being unfaithful and expressed doubts about the baby. "Why did you stay with him?" I asked. "If you were so unhappy, why not just leave?" "I was still hoping we could make it work," she replied. "You don't just walk away when things get difficult. You try to fix it." Anyway, on that night, Rob was drunk and I was upset. I thought I'd let him sleep and stay with a friend for the night. I had just stepped out the door when someone pushed me. I woke up in the hospital the next morning. They told me I had lost the baby. The police took Rob, and he claimed he was trying to harm the baby because he didn't think it was his. I pressed charges to ensure he stayed away from me. I got a quick divorce, and he was found guilty. "So, Steve, you're not the only one with a troubled past," she said, her eyes red from tears. We sat in silence for a few minutes. We had both finished our drinks and were wondering what to do next. "Well, I need to freshen up before bed," Pam said, standing up. "Since I didn't bring extra clothes, I'll have to borrow something to wear. So get ready," she said with a smile. "I'll let you tell your story tomorrow," she added, as she took the glasses to the kitchen sink. I showed Pam to the bathroom and said I would get her a toothbrush from the other bathroom. "Is there anything else you need? Mouthwash, dental floss, deodorant?" I asked. "You came prepared, didn't you?" "That sounds good for tonight. I can bring my things next time," she said with a smile. While Pam took a shower, I got everything ready for the evening and laid it out on the counter. Afterward, we settled in for a nice evening, talking and sharing stories about our lives. We enjoyed each other's company, reflecting on the difficulties we both had faced. Pam gently brushed her hand through her hair and smiled warmly. "That was really nice," she said. Then she added, "But let's keep this evening special." She stood up and said, "Just lie back and relax." Pam moved with confidence, creating a cozy atmosphere, something I hadn't felt in a while. Her presence helped me feel at ease, and I was grateful for how naturally she did that. We shared a moment that felt more important than just a quick meeting. It was about understanding and trust. After that, we enjoyed some quiet time together, happy with the bond we had created. Pam broke the silence with a light joke. "For someone who hasn't been in this situation for a while, you're doing great." We both laughed, feeling the weight of the past lift away. We spent the rest of the night sharing stories and keeping things light. As the evening came to an end, we decided it was time to rest. The warmth of our connection stayed with us as we fell asleep. The next morning, Pam woke up to sunlight filling the room. She noticed I wasn't there and found a note on my pillow. "Went for a run around the lake. If I'm not back when you wake up, just look out the balcony doors and wave." Pam smiled, wrapped herself in a blanket, and went to the balcony. She saw me running by and called out, "Hey there! Hurry back!" I waved and made my way back to the building. When I returned, Pam greeted me with a playful question. "Isn't it chilly outside?" "Not if you keep moving," I said with a grin. "Running gives me energy in the morning." We enjoyed a relaxed breakfast together, with Pam choosing coffee to start her day. We joked and laughed, creating a light and warm atmosphere. The morning passed by comfortably, showing that our connection was becoming more meaningful. We both felt it, and it was clear that whatever was ahead, we were ready to face it together. "So why don't we have breakfast and then spend some time chatting afterward?" Pam suggested. "How about breakfast first and then we can spend the day together?" I replied. "Let's do both then," she added with a smile. As we prepared breakfast, I thought about how to share what she wanted to know without feeling too exposed. That really hit the spot. "I guess I was hungrier than I realized," Pam said, rubbing her belly. "Is there any coffee left?" "Just enough for you," I replied. "I've had my fill," I said while loading the dishes into the dishwasher. "Do you want to start talking here or in the living room?" "I prefer the living room, but knowing you, you might change the subject. Let's begin here and then move to the living room later. I want the whole story. We have the whole weekend, so don't hold back," she said, curling up on the couch. "Okay, what do you want to know?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "First, how long have you felt so strongly about certain things?" Pam inquired. "I wouldn't say it's a strong feeling. That incident at the club was bound to happen," I replied. Now I'm really puzzled. Just tell me what happened in your own words, Pam encouraged, settling into her seat. Fine, you win, I said, sitting across from her. Carol and I met at a party hosted by Lisa and her friends. I was not looking for anything serious, and she wasn't either. Nick and Lisa were engaged and planning a spring wedding. Carol was going to be one of Lisa's bridesmaids, and Nick wanted me to be his best man. So whenever Nick and Lisa were around, Carol was usually there too. We started out as a group, but soon began spending more time alone together. Eventually, we started dating. Carol was a lively person, and I often found myself helping her out of tricky spots. She had a way of attracting attention from the wrong people at the wrong time. Eventually, I got tired of it and decided I needed a break. "What's wrong?" she asked me one day after about 2 weeks. "Do you not like me anymore?" "Carol, if we're together, it should just be us. I'm tired of you being so friendly with every guy you meet," I told her. "Are you saying you want us to be exclusive?" "I suppose that's what I'm saying," I admitted, surprising myself. "All right, let's try it and see how it goes." From that moment on, we were a couple. At Nick and Lisa's wedding, Carol mentioned that when we got married, it would be more relaxed. "Our wedding?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, our wedding. Eventually, you'll ask me and I'll say yes, but it won't be formal. It will be more of a fun gathering." And that's how it began. 2 years after we first met, we got married and settled into a nice apartment close to our jobs. Life was good. We both had steady jobs and enough extra money to enjoy ourselves. But in our 3rd year, things started to shift. One evening, Carol said, "Steve, have you ever had something you really wanted to do but never tried?" "Like what?" I replied. "You know, something you've always dreamed of doing but haven't," she explained. "Everyone has those," I remarked, intrigued. "Steve, my birthday is in 2 weeks and there's something I'd like to do." "Do you think we could do this for my birthday?" she asked. "If it's something we can both enjoy, I'm open to it," I replied. 2 weeks later, on her birthday, we decided to try something new. It was an idea she had been thinking about for a while, and we saw it as a way to explore a different part of our relationship. That night, our focus was on connecting in a way that felt meaningful and brought us closer together. We aimed to understand each other's needs better and find ways to support one another. However, as time went by, we noticed that this new experience wasn't strengthening our bond. Instead, it started to create some distance between us. What we thought would bring us together was pulling us apart. As the evening went on, Carol signaled that she had enough and wanted to stop. The room was a bit messy, so I helped her tidy up and made sure everything was in order. "I'm really tired but feeling pretty good inside," she said, smiling at me. "I need to freshen up." While she cleaned up, I organized the room. Afterward, I got her a bottle of water, and she mentioned that she needed to sleep in the next morning. She ended up sleeping until nearly noon. Later, Pam asked me about the previous night and seemed curious about how it went. I kept my response simple. "I bought her a new outfit and we went downtown. We had dinner at a nice restaurant and enjoyed some time together. At one point, I realized this wasn't the path I wanted our relationship to take." The next year, Carol wanted to try something else, but it didn't go well. We found ourselves in a crowded club where she received a lot of attention, which made me uncomfortable. That night, I met Dan and his friend Tim, who seemed keen to spend time with her. As the evening continued, I grew more frustrated. Carol was enjoying the attention while I felt out of place. When I finally reached my limit, I told her it was time to leave. On the way home, I stayed quiet, upset about how the night went. "It was just some fun," Carol said as we entered our apartment, trying to brush off what had happened. "Fun? I felt really embarrassed," I responded, still irritated. "I feel like I don't really know you anymore." The tension lasted for days, and eventually, we had a disagreement over dinner. "Steve, it was just a different experience. No one got hurt, and we're still together. Why is this such a big deal?" Carol said, clearly frustrated. "Carol, you know what I want for my birthday next year? Something simpler, something we can both enjoy without involving anyone else," I told her. Carol tried to make light of it, but I realized that our views on these things were just too different. I gathered my things and decided to take a break from our relationship. "I'll call you with my new address when I find a place," I said to her. This felt like the best choice for me. "That won't change anything," I remarked as I walked out, ignoring Carol's voice behind me. I was at the Holiday Inn bar when Nick sat down next to me. "You always do this," he said with a chuckle as he ordered a beer. "Want me to tell everyone I found you?" "Not right now," I said, finishing my third drink. "I just learned that we see loyalty very differently. I'm starting to worry about my marriage." "You know she's really upset at our place, right?" Nick said. "She's only upset because I won't follow along with what she wants. Nick, she was dancing with two guys and they were teasing me. I almost lost my cool and confronted one of them while trying to convince Carol to leave. The worst part is that Carol doesn't think she did anything wrong," I said, starting on my fourth drink. "Looks like that won't happen again," Nick said with a nervous laugh. But he quickly stopped when he saw my expression. "Sorry, bad joke. But we both know you're not really going to leave her, right?" "Not this time, but if it happens again, I can't promise anything," I replied. I waited a few days before going back home. We made up, and things felt normal again until my birthday came around the next year. "Are you up for something special this year?" Carol asked, trying to cheer things up. I planned something a little different for us, a couple's massage. It was supposed to be relaxing, but it highlighted how differently we viewed certain aspects of our relationship. I realized we needed to have a discussion about where we stood. After the massage, we talked about our feelings and what had happened during the experience. It was a wake-up call for both of us, and we agreed to work on understanding each other better. I decided to go with the flow, curious about where our conversation might go. "Since we're here, how about we just enjoy this moment?" I suggested. "Sure, let's take it easy," she replied with a laugh. At breakfast the next morning, Carol smiled at me warmly. "See, I told you we could have fun and still wake up feeling good," she said, holding my hand. Looking back, I see that I should have addressed the issue immediately. That was my mistake. To Carol, it seemed like I was okay with everything that happened. But I downplayed it and suggested it was time to move on from these little games. After talking for a while, I needed something to drink, so I went to the fridge for a glass of orange juice and then sat next to Pam. "So things got a little carried away," Pam said. "Sometimes in the heat of the moment we do things we wouldn't usually do. It's just part of being human," she added. "After hearing your story, I think we both could use a break," she continued, leaning in for a hug. We decided to take it easy for the rest of the day, enjoying each other's company. Later, we went out for dinner at a nearby Italian restaurant. Holding a glass of water, Pam said, "It doesn't sound like it was all bad. At least your marriage had some good times." "True, but things changed later on. I'll tell you the rest after dinner. For now, let's just enjoy the meal," I replied as our food arrived. The walk back to my place was cold, with the wind howling and snowflakes flying around. I continued my story, hoping the cold air would help keep my feelings in check. As Carol's birthday approached, I tried to ask her not to do whatever she was planning, but she insisted it would be a night to remember. Her birthday was on a Friday, and I still had no idea what she was planning. The only thing she would tell me was that I needed to go with the flow. By 7 o'clock, dinner was finished and everything was cleaned up. She led me upstairs to our bedroom and started talking. "This seems nice," I thought as she smiled and asked me to relax. I went along with it, thinking it would be a fun night. But when I heard the front doorbell, I started to feel uneasy. Who could that be? I wondered, feeling a bit nervous. Pam and I had reached my condo, so I paused my story, which made her a little frustrated. "Darn it, Steve, you were just getting to the good part," she complained. Inside, I asked if she wanted anything. "No, I'm fine. Just finish your story," she said, getting comfortable on the couch. "I need a drink before I continue," I told her as I grabbed 2 beers and sat across from her. "I've never told anyone about this night, and it might put me in a bad mood." "If you don't want to continue, you don't have to," Pam reassured me. "No, it's time I get this off my chest, and you're the only person I trust enough to share it with. I just hope it doesn't scare you away." "It can't be that bad, and I'm not going anywhere," Pam replied. "All right, just so you're ready," I told her. Well, there I was, lying there when I heard voices. I probably should have stopped things right then, but I was too intrigued. I heard them go down the hall to the spare bedroom and shut the door. After waiting for about 10 to 15 minutes, I started calling out Carol's name, getting louder each time until I yelled, "Carol!" My life changed about 15 seconds later. Dan walked into my room with a grin and put some tape over my mouth. "This should keep you quiet," he said, leaving the key to the handcuffs on the dresser. "If you can get these, you can join us. If not, oh well." He laughed as he left and closed the door. I struggled against the restraints, worrying about what might be happening outside. I fought until I was too tired to move. Eventually, Dan came back to the room, teased me again, and then left. I kept trying to break free until the bed fell apart with a loud crash. After they left, it was quiet except for the sound of the shower running. I lay there feeling worn out and upset. I don't know how long I stayed there. Then I heard Carol scream, "Oh my God!" as she lifted the headboard off me and freed me from the restraints. My hands and feet were sore, but I barely noticed. I just saw Carol looking very shaken. I lost control and started to throw things around the room in frustration. I was in the middle of making a mess when I felt a sudden shock. I shook it off, but then I felt it again and again. Finally, I fell to the floor and lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a room with no windows, and a nurse was sitting by my bed. When I tried to move, I found I was tied to the bed. "Where am I?" I asked. "You're in Memorial Hospital. You were brought in late last night. How are you feeling?" She replied. "Tired and my hands hurt," I answered. "You lost some skin and you may have scars, but you'll be okay," she reassured me. "The doctor will be in soon," she added before leaving. The doctor arrived a short time later. "Well, you look much better than last night. How are you feeling?" he asked while looking at my chart. "Tired, sore, and hungry," I said. He untied me and gave me some pain medication and ointment for my injuries. "You will have some scars that will fade, but they won't disappear completely. The police said there are no charges, so you're free to go. However, you were brought in without clothes." "That's fine, I'll call a friend. Nick brought me a change of clothes." "What happened last night?" Nick asked. "Carol came over to our place upset. She said something about it going all wrong. What happened to your hands?" "Nick, listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. Don't mention last night again, and I don't want to hear Carol's name. Do you understand?" I said firmly. "But Steve," he started, but I interrupted him. "If you do, you'll never see me again. Now please, just drive me home. No more talking," I told him, trying to keep my anger in check. We drove in silence the rest of the way. I knew Nick had a lot of questions, but I wasn't ready to talk. I thanked him as I got out and walked into my building. Without a key, I went to the manager's apartment. "Mr. Kelly, can you please let me into my apartment?" I asked. We walked upstairs and he opened the door. The place was a mess, with furniture and clothes everywhere. "Steve, if it were up to me, I'd let you stay, but it's not. I need you to find another place as soon as you can. I'm not throwing you out, but you have 90 days. Keep the key, and if you need anything else, just let me know." "I'm really sorry," he said before leaving. If you're sorry, what am I? I wondered to myself. I guess I ended up sleeping on the couch in my clothes that night. The next morning I looked around. The damage was bad. Most of the bedroom furniture was ruined, and many chairs looked broken. Carol's clothes were all over the apartment. The only room that was clean was the kitchen. I made myself some coffee and toasted a few pieces of bread. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. I found it under a pile of things in my bedroom just before it went quiet again. I saw I had missed 3 calls from Carol. I turned it off and went room by room, unplugging all the phones. The only one I left connected was the kitchen phone with the answering machine on. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when the kitchen phone rang. I let the answering machine get it. "I know you're there and can hear me, Steve," Carol's voice came through. "What happened wasn't how it was meant to go. Please call me so we can talk. I'm scared to come home after everything. Please call. I care about you. I really needed a shower, so I cleaned up the best I could. I got dressed, made a shopping list, and headed out. My first stop was Walgreens to pick up my prescriptions and supplies for my ankles and wrists. I also bought 3 boxes of lawn bags for later. Then I went to the mall to cancel my Sprint account and opened a new one with a private number. I wanted to withdraw funds from our savings and checking accounts, but my bank was closed for the weekend. However, I stopped at the ATM and took out the maximum amount I could from both accounts. Lastly, I went to the store and bought 3 6-packs of beverages before heading home. When I got back, I saw 2 messages from Carol and 1 from Lisa. I deleted Carol's messages and listened to Lisa's. Steve, this is Lisa. I need to come over and get a few things for Carol. I don't know what happened between you two, but she's very upset. Unless I hear from you, I'll be there around 7 o'clock. If you get a chance, please call Carol. She's really worried about you. Looking at my watch, I realized I had only about 2 hours before Lisa arrived, and I had a lot to do. It seemed I had pulled many of Carol's clothes out of her closet the night before. The closet rod was broken, and clothes were everywhere in the bedroom and hallway. I grabbed a plastic bag and started picking things up. I began in the living room, then moved to the hallway, and finally to the master bedroom. After filling 10 bags, I took a break for a drink. How did she fit all these clothes in that small closet? I wondered. I ended up with 12 bags for her clothes, 3 bags for items from her dresser and bathroom, and 4 more for her shoes. After 2 more beers, I was ready for Lisa to arrive. "What is all this?" Lisa asked as she and Nick walked into my apartment. "All of Carol's things except her furniture," I answered. "I only came for a few outfits, not everything," Lisa reminded me. "The apartment manager asked me to find a new place, and I'm not taking Carol with me, so these bags are all her stuff. She can come by and get any furniture left, or I'll dispose of it. Her choice," I explained. "Don't you think you two should have a talk about this?" Lisa suggested. "Not a chance. If you don't mind, I'm going to finish the last 3 beers in my 6-pack. I need some rest tonight, unless Carol decides to cause more trouble," I said. They could tell I wasn't in the mood to talk, so they packed what they could into their SUV and left. I dragged out the mattress, turned it over, and collapsed on it. I woke up at 9 o'clock the next morning because of some aches. I took 2 pain pills with a beer and quickly fell back asleep. That was how I spent my weekend. I called my boss and asked for the next week off. He wasn't pleased with the short notice, but after I mentioned I had an accident, he agreed to give me the time off. I guess the mess of my marriage was a valid reason. On Monday, I got back to sorting things out. I took half of the money from our savings and checking accounts and opened a new account in my name. I signed a paper to remove my name from our joint accounts, but it would take a week to process. I closed our joint credit cards, those with no balance, and paid off half of the ones with money owed. We each had our own cars, retirement plans, and health insurance, so I didn't have to worry about those. I sent an email to my HR manager to remove Carol's name as the beneficiary of my retirement and life insurance. Looking back, I felt good about what I managed to do that day. The rest of the week, I focused on finding a new place to live. After a month of not taking her calls, Carol started sending me emails nonstop. I couldn't understand why she didn't just come over since she still had a key to the apartment. I finally replied to one of Carol's emails. "Carol, I don't want to see or hear from you again. Our marriage is over. You made sure of that. Please leave me alone. I hope your time with Dan and Tim was worth it." I didn't expect a response, but she replied anyway. "Steve, I'm really sorry. It wasn't meant to turn out this way. I sent Dan to help you, but he told me you got upset and left. Maybe I wasn't thinking clearly because of our earlier conversations. I'll give you some space and reach out later." Carol ended her message with, "I do care and miss you." "So, Pam, now you know about my difficult night," I said, finishing my second beer. "I still feel angry at her more than you can imagine," I said as I stood and walked back and forth. "So that's why you confronted Dan. What about Tim?" she asked. "I had a private detective find him about a month ago. I know where he works and lives now. I did before I dealt with Dan, but now I'm not so sure," I said, trying to calm myself. "You know he'll be ready for you, right?" Pam said. "Why go through this? It seems Dan was the main troublemaker, and he won't be a problem for a while." "Pam, now that everything is out in the open, it's time to close this chapter for good, starting with Tim and ending with Carol," I told her. "Steve, you're starting to worry me. I hope you're not thinking of doing something hasty. After what happened with Dan, it could go badly for you," Pam said, trying to reason with me. "No, nothing like that, but I will make sure she faces the consequences," I said, still angry and pacing. "There will be accountability for her actions, just wait." "Steve, your marriage to Carol is over. Why can't you just let it go? She can't hurt you anymore, and you can't hurt her," Pam said gently. "But Pam, Carol and I are not divorced yet. She filed the papers a couple of months ago, and when I got them, I threw them away. She has been trying to get me to sign because she's dating someone new. I still have one more move to make before this is over," I told her. "Steve, listen to yourself. You sound fixated on getting even. Sign the papers and move on. What difference will it make if you get one last chance at her? She's moved on. Why can't you? Pam asked. Because she needs to understand the impact of what she did to me and to our marriage, I said, raising my voice. I want her to remember, and with my plan, she will, I told Pam. Steve, I don't like this side of you. You don't let go. You pursue resentment at any cost. I think I need to leave. I thought I knew you, but this isn't who I thought you were. I'm sorry for everything that happened, but I can't move on from this, Pam said, standing up and putting on her coat. If you go through with your plans, Steve, we're done. Don't reach out to me afterward because I'm giving you this one last chance. Goodbye, Pam, I replied as she walked out. I really did care about her, I thought to myself. 2 weeks later, when Tim opened his apartment door, I put my hand on his shoulder and walked him inside. We need to talk, I said firmly. Listen, I didn't do anything wrong. It was all Dan's idea, Tim quickly explained. I told him it was too much, but he didn't listen. Carol arranged everything. We thought everything was fine after it happened. I'm really sorry. I didn't know you were still in a tough spot until we got in the car. Please just leave me alone. Tim, my birthday is in 2 weeks. I need you to leave town by then. Think of it as your gift to me. If you're still here after that, there will be issues. Do you understand? I asked him. He nodded. Remember, 2 weeks, I reminded him as I left his apartment. 1 down, 1 to go. If you have enough money, many things can happen. I spent almost $8,000, but the day before my birthday, I received an email with my gift. It's all arranged for 9:30 a.m., it said. I went to work on Wednesday feeling happier than I had in a long time. Everyone wished me a happy birthday, and there was even a cake for me in the afternoon. My boss and I shared an early dinner, and I finally got home around 8 o'clock. I noticed my answering machine was blinking with 25 messages. I deleted them all. I opened a bottle of Corona and prepared for what was coming. Just before 9 o'clock, there was a loud knock on my door. I set my beer down, took a deep breath, and opened the door. "You have some nerve," Carol shouted while Nick held her back. "Good evening, Carol. How are you?" I asked casually. "How could you share that video with my parents and friends?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "I'm not sure what video you mean, Carol. If you tell me what's in it, maybe I can help," I replied calmly. "Why would you do this, Steve? Do you still hold a grudge against me that you'd want to ruin my life?" she questioned. "Now I see what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "The one labeled Carol Moore cheats on her husband." "Not only did I see it, but I also lived it," I said, as she finally stopped resisting. I rolled up my sleeves and showed them my scars. "Do you see these? They're a constant reminder of what you did. Every day they remind me of how you broke our marriage. At first, I even thought Dan and Tim were hurting you, Carol. If I had known what was really happening, I would have done anything to save you because I cared that much. Little did I know you planned the whole thing with them. Everyone, including your parents and our friends, blamed me for the breakup. They said awful things about me for over a year. Maybe now they'll see the truth." "I said I was sorry. I tried to talk to you many times, but you never listened," Carol said, now in tears. "Sorry? You say you're sorry? I regret not ending things the night we met Dan and Tim. When I sent you that birthday card months ago, I told you it would all end on my birthday this year, and now it has." "Steve, you've gone too far this time," Nick said, looking at both Carol and Lisa. "Nick, have you watched the tape?" I asked. "No, I haven't," he replied. "That's because I didn't send it to you and Lisa. I didn't want to drag you into this. But if you think I'm wrong, watch the tape. Imagine me struggling for hours to help her. Then tell me what you would have done if it had been Lisa," I told him. "Carol, if there's anything on that tape that's not true, I'll ensure a correction is sent out. Otherwise, it is what it is." I then handed her a large envelope. "These are the divorce papers, signed and notarized. So, if you don't mind, I have things to do before I go to bed. I'd like to say it's been nice, but it hasn't," I told her as I went inside and closed the door. Finally, leaning against the door, I knew it was over. I had made arrangements to send a copy of the tape to her parents and everyone who had taken her side after our breakup. I could have sent it to her workplace or church, but I didn't. Instead, I only posted it on 2 websites. The income from that should cover the costs I incurred. Carol threatened to take me to court, but nothing came of it. The tape was uploaded from an overseas site and routed through several other countries, so it couldn't be traced back to me. About 3 weeks after everything happened, I received a short email from my ex-in-laws. "I'm sorry, I never knew," was all it said. Some of my old friends tried to reach out to me and apologize, but I never called them back. I guess I wasn't as bad as people made me out to be. The video spread quickly. It took just one person to download it and share it with others. Soon enough, Carol was the topic of conversation. About a month later, Carol left her job and moved away. Many people at work had seen the video. Although no one mentioned it, I became seen as someone who had been affected by the situation. It was 2 months before Nick reached out to me. Yes, he had seen the video, and he probably would have reacted the same way I did. But to keep the peace in his family, we couldn't meet. At least not yet. I understood. I lost Pam and now Nick, at least temporarily. I emailed Pam, but she never got back to me. Well, I tried. I started dating again. First with a couple of women from work, then with others I met here and there. About 4 months after that difficult night with Carol, I spotted Pam at a downtown venue. She was with a group of friends, but eventually came over to me. "Hi, Steve, how are you?" she asked. "Doing well," I answered. "I heard about what happened and even saw part of the video online," Pam told me. "I had no idea," she started to say, but I interrupted her. "That's right. You didn't know when you judged me back then. You saw me as someone bitter, trying to hurt my ex-wife. But you made your choice," I said. "Maybe we could meet sometime and talk," she suggested. "Pam, remember my email a few months ago? Maybe you were still upset or trying to make a point. I've been through that, and what good did it do me? I cared about you, but I guess that wasn't enough. I'm sorry, but it won't work," I told her. "So, if you don't mind, my date is coming back," I said, pointing to the short redhead walking toward our table. "Take care, and I hope you find someone who makes you happy," I added as I greeted Tammy when she reached us. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" Tammy asked. "Tammy, this is Pam. Pam, this is Tammy," I said. "We used to date a while ago," I explained. "Well, Pam, he's mine now, and I'm not letting him go. Nice guys are hard to find. I've seen my share of challenging ones," she said with a smile. "It was nice meeting you. Steve, honey, let's go back to your place," she said. "Okay, Tammy, let's go," I replied, grabbing my jacket. I approached Pam and gave her a warm hug, gently saying, "Just so you know, I really liked you, and it took me a while to move on." "It's a shame you wouldn't give me another chance," I said, giving her a friendly gesture goodbye. I took Tammy's hand and we walked through the crowd and out of the club. Pam watched us leave, murmuring softly, "If only things were different." Hey, listeners! If you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.